Consultation Podcast Network.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum podcast. I'm Ryan from themoonwasdeadworld.net and coldsploitation.com, and I'm joined by my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
It's going pretty well. We are talking. We're in the midst of Remakeoween, our Halloween special edition that we're doing all of September and October. It's a long-running series because we've got a lot in store for you. Lots of remakes.
A lot of content. We're a content positive network.
Yeah, some would call us, I don't know. What
generous.
Yeah, sure. Generous.
Amazing.
Hardworking. Just patting our own back.
Superlative.
Yeah.
Where's Jeff Daniels to use those? That's where you probably learned
adjectives.
It's probably where you learned half those adjectives. It's just like watching Jeff Daniels and taking notes.
Yeah, that's true.
Be like, I don't know what he said there, but I'm going to look it up.
I'm going to use it later. No, we're back today. It's number 2 in our Remakeoween special. And we're talking, and this is kind of a cheat, I feel like, but Martin doesn't.
It's not a cheat.
We'll talk about that in a second. We're back with It, the 2017 film.
Who?
I know, we're getting into those pronouns.
Get into that, like Abbott and Costello game.
Yep. Of saying the pronoun and not understanding what you're talking about. Yeah, we're talking about It, the 2017 horror film that was in production hell for a long time and eventually made its way to the big screen. And I call it a cheat on the remake part because technically it's more of a adaptation of Stephen King's book rather than a remake of the TV miniseries from 1990.
Which is also an adaptation of Stephen King's book.
It is. I think the area the gray area that we get into here is that this film, 2017's It, is much more related to Stephen King's book than it is to the miniseries, because the miniseries didn't do a very good job of using Stephen King's novel and the things that happen in that to present the story.
Well, to be fair, it aired on national television in 1990.
That's true. So it was a rough time. It was a miniseries, 2 episodes, 4 hours.
Something that if they were going to do like a miniseries, that probably should have been up like HBO or Showtime.
Yeah.
If you wanted like a much closer adaptation of the book itself and like graphic content.
Something that could get it a little bit more into the...
Because you're not going to be able to do that on primetime television.
Right. Yeah, this was...
I mean, for the time, they got away with able to do a lot more than you'd expect, but I mean, even still. Content's not really meant for...
Well, it's meant more for like easy digestion. The 1990 miniseries was very much about easily digestible bits that would appeal to the mass market. And I think you see that when you go back and rewatch that that original miniseries rather than this remake, is that original one was very, it wasn't dedicated to horror fans. It wasn't even really dedicated to people who read Stephen King. It was more of a mass market appeal to like, hey, maybe people who watch primetime TV will get a kick out of this. And we can get 2 nights out of it for the ratings. So it was kind of like a ratings grab. And anytime...
With all these big name actors like young Seth Green.
Yeah. John Ritter.
Tim Curry.
Yep. I mean, that is in itself a surprise for the 1990 film, was that they were able to get so many so many big name stars.
Asshole with ponytail.
Yeah.
That very early 90s like ponytail look. That's a terrible.
That's always fun.
It's a terrible. The mullet looks so much better than that. If you're gonna like have long hair like that, just let it flow and let it go. Don't tie it back so you look like like I'm a computer nerd, guys. Stereotypical computer nerd of the '90s. Let me fix your 8 megabyte computer.
So I haven't watched that remake or that the original in a while.
It's been a long time for me, and I had like I said, I was telling you, I had to watch clips to kind of get like a overall feel and gist.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I saw bits and pieces of it not too long ago. But I feel like if I were to go back,
I'm surprised your dad doesn't make you watch it like every year, like
no,
right next to like Christmas Vacation. Like
no, I don't even think he's that into that TV miniseries. But I have seen clips of it previously, but I think that if I was to go back and rewatch the remake, why do I keep saying remake? We're in Remakeoween, I guess. Maybe that's why. If I was to go back and rewatch the miniseries, I wouldn't be very impressed with it. That's happened once before. I watched Creature, it was called. It was Peter Benchley's Creature, and it was on ABC. I remember it very clearly. Remember tuning in for that miniseries on both nights, being very impressed by it when I was younger. And then I went back to rewatch it not too long ago because it came out on DVD, and I was like, what was I thinking? This is terrible. This is horrible. And it has Craig T. Nelson in it. And
coach himself.
That's right. And no, I mean, it was definitely not what I remembered. So I have a feeling that going back to rewatch the original It is going to be much of the same, where you see the inspiration that came from Stephen King's story, but all in all, it just doesn't do much to really get that story across, because there's so much story in the book It that
and you read it,
and I've read it.
I have not,
and I think that
knowing that it's over 1,100 pages, I will not read it. I just come on.
You don't have time.
Come on, really? Like that's like
you have 4 days a week off. You could plow right through that.
It wouldn't hold my
sun up to sundown.
It wouldn't be able to hold my interest though.
30 pages
I'm not,
a day.
Like I'm not even like a novel guy like to begin with. I've told you that, and I've said it before on the podcast. Like when it comes to books, I'd much rather read like newspapers, nonfiction, like biographies and autobiographies and like histories, things like that. Or just how to change a light bulb. That to me is like
that'd be more.
It's like
way more interesting than reading.
Like how to be like electrician for dummies, that's more interesting to me.
So you want to be educated,
I mean,
well, think of it as a history of dairy, and then read it like that. Read it as a historical recounting of a fictional town, and go from there.
I mean, like I said, I don't know why when it comes to novels they really don't. I mean, there are books that we read like through high school and stuff that I really enjoy. Like I still like All Quiet on the Western Front.
Historical.
It doesn't have to do like necessarily the World War I setting, but I mean, it's like I enjoyed. I love
Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Yeah, that was.
Oh, okay. I was just naming off historical ones.
I like Huck Finn. Huck Finn a lot, but it's it just. I don't know. Maybe it's because it came to by when 10th grade came around. That's when I started reading, the actual books. Because before
you're actually getting into them.
Before then, I was reading maybe a book or two a year, and then spark noting the rest. I don't fucking care about True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. Let's read Chocolate War. That's what Yeah. That's interesting.
Well, speaking of spark notes, this remake of it is really like a Spark Notes condensed version of reading Stephen King's the first part of Stephen King's novel, because obviously
because it's 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
So you're saying if it was to be the first part of the actual novel, it'd be 4 hours long.
Yeah.
So this would be an 8-hour movie.
We'll talk about that when we get into it a little bit more. But yeah, I absolutely after reading the novel, I think that even just part 1 of it, chapter 1 as they're calling it, which you don't get until the end of the movie, but shouldn't come as much of a surprise to anyone who knows anything about it.
I think that's only even people who don't know anything about it. At least if you're over 18, you know there's going to be a second part.
There's going to be a second part.
There's not, you're not going to be like, what do you mean there's a second part?
Yeah. I mean, I feel bad if anybody was really dumbfounded. Like, what? I was under the impression this was it. No, but yeah. Pronouns.
I'm gonna be doing that all day,
all night.
We should have a rim shot drop ready for that. Like,
I know. No, but I would say that even with the length, the 2 hours and 15 minutes that we get,
it's not 2 and 15. It's 2.5.
It's like
I
1:43. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. 2 hours. Let's say 2 hours and 20 minutes for the giggles. But I think even at that long of a runtime, there was a lot more within the kid storyline from Stephen King's novel that didn't get touched upon.
Like children's sex.
Well,
children gangbang.
I'm pretty sure they left that out for a reason. They could have easily encapsulated that within the film, but they chose not to. So that was a conscious decision. But I'm talking about more of the subtextual elements of Stephen King's story that don't really. I mean, they're kind of brushed upon in this film, but they don't come out. And understandably, I'm not saying that that's something that I think is a major detraction from this film, but. It's something that does occur, and I could see it being even a little bit longer. You know, if we're talking like a Scorsese film, he gets away with 3 hours. Why can't it?
No, I mean I'm not. And we've talked about film length before on here. Look, I'm fine with films being long. You just got to do it well, and encapsulate the audience. Scorsese gets away with it because Scorsese's one of the best directors of all time. That's why he gets away with it. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to tell a story. He knows how to pace it. The Good and the Bad and the Ugly gets away with being nearly 3 hours long, with like 15-minute stare downs in it because Sergio Leone has a vivid imagination to make those like moments that are drawn out into an ungodly length feel important and exciting and get you in going with what's going on. Batman v Superman doesn't do that.
Yeah, no, I mean I agree. I think.
So, I mean, look, I would have been fine with this being, now that I've seen it, spoiler alert, I would have been fine if they were probably stretched this out.
Give it a little bit longer to...
Yeah, now that I've seen it, I would have been fine with it. Like, I probably could say this would have worked as a 3-hour film. Mm-hmm. And I probably would have been totally fine with it.
We'll talk about this a little bit later in terms of how close it is to Stephen King's film, how good it is at adapting it, and get into the time length of it. But let's just before we take a break, let's just get into this right now. Did you enjoy it? We'll throw it at you right now. And
we're getting into the nitty gritty.
Well,
we don't want no surprises.
No, well, I mean, we want to lead in. We want to give the listeners a hook to like stick around, like. And so that means you've got to come off as a little bit ambiguous. Did I enjoy it? Well, and then just leave it at that.
And then we'll be right back.
Yeah, no.
So, did I enjoy it? You'll find out after the sponsor and our beer talk. So take that.
Ever wonder what happened to the actor from the 80s movie that you love? What about the director of the 70s splatter film that turned your stomach? Or how about the model that starred in your favorite MTV video? I'd like to invite you to join me, Sean Riley, the host of Second Acts podcast, on the first of each month as we check in with some of the most memorable faces you've forgotten to see what's going on in the second acts of their lives. You can check out Second Acts podcast on your favorite podcast app as well as on YouTube. Also, be sure to check out our Facebook page for bonus content, as well as ways to interact with the show. F. Scott Fitzgerald once wrote, "There are no second acts in American lives, but there are on Second Acts Podcast."
All right, guys, we're back with our beer talk this week. Skipped out on it last week in the first Remakeoween episode, but we've got something new today.
Someone did their job.
I did, yeah. I went out and I got something specifically for this show. And obviously...
An it beer?
Yeah, right? We have been, I mean, we're into September now. And still, it is hard for me to find Oktoberfests out there that I haven't had before. Which is, I mean, in a way, it's not surprising because we have a small community. They don't often branch out with new things or get things imported. So we're kind of limited to what we could try. However, I did grab Goose Island's new Festbier for 2017. And it's a little bit different because I did know that Goose Island made an Oktoberfest last year, and it was just called the Goose Island Oktoberfest. And I had it. It's pretty good. And I did not realize that this Festbier is considered something different from their other Oktoberfest. Now, I don't know if the Oktoberfest is out this year. I haven't seen it. Have you?
No, I don't really pay attention to Goose Island.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't either, but if it's there and it's something to try and we haven't given it a shot yet, I will.
It's one of those goddamn macro craft. Yeah. Because they've been bought out by Anheuser-Busch. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding about that. Like, I don't really care about that.
That never sways me.
No, it doesn't. If it's good, it's good. I don't care. But, I mean, I only really had, like, 2 of their beers.
Uh-huh.
I've had, like, their pale ale.
Yep. That's pretty readily available around here.
Which is the Honkers Ale.
Yep.
And I think they're IPA. They're IPA or the summer. I can't remember.
It's probably the IPA because that's pretty available around here too.
But other than that,
they have it on tap.
I just, they do have like some of their seasonal stuff out, but it's not anything I really gravitate towards. Cause I don't really, because like with especially the Honkers Ale, I remember having that because I used to have it at my the old job I used to work at, Stewart's, which is kind of surprising. But I wasn't really overly impressed with it, so kind of like with Red Hook. It's like the same thing with like Red Hook. From like just trying like the Audible Ale, I was like meh. So I've never really bothered.
Okay.
I've never really bothered, and their Red Hook's IPA. I've never really gone on my way to try to find other ones because after like trying like their standard beer, I was like it's just kind of it's just there. So
yeah. Well, I think that I just gravitated towards this Goose Island because it was an Oktoberfest, one that I haven't had because I haven't had the what they're considering the Fest beer at all. So I wanted to grab it, give us an Oktoberfest, get us in the spirit.
It has the Bavarian flag, a nice Stein on it, and the beer is spelled in German.
And a nice font choice for the Fest beer.
Yeah, it's nice, German style.
I love that. So that's what, I mean, it attracted me. That's really the main thing. And it was pretty cheap, so, for a 12-pack. So that's another good attraction. But I think the main difference between this, Oktoberfest Marzen style and Goose Island's traditional Oktoberfest is this has an added noble hops to it. And I don't know, I mean, I wouldn't say that addition to a regular Marzen style beer is... It's not like super different. I wouldn't say the Fest beer tastes astoundingly different from the a regular Oktoberfest. Would you?
No, I would say it's more for the Marzen style. It's very, very much more like I would say like an American, more on the bready, maltier, darker note side.
There's definitely a heavy bready, malty taste to this. And that I enjoy that, honestly. I do like an American Oktoberfest. I might offend some people, but I think I like American Oktoberfest more than traditional Oktoberfests that you would get from a actual German,
like a Hofenbrau.
Right? Yep, like a Hofenbrau or something like that. I like American Oktoberfests more because of their heavy malt character.
Granted, one of these days we're gonna have to go to Germany and see like what over in the fatherland for me,
Go to an official Oktoberfest.
And see, like, if, like, theirs is more like that, too. Because, again, like, the German imports we get around here is, like, Hofenbrau, like, a couple others. And from what I remember when we had those, like, yeah, they're malty, like, like, maltier in style, like, compared to, like, a normal American lager. But they're not, like, overly, like, bready and malty.
They were still pretty light.
Yeah, compared to, like, a Sam Adams Oktoberfest or this, or the Jenny Oktoberfest. Whereas, like, Saranax is, like, got that good balance in between being, it's got that, breadiness to it, but it's also, much on the lighter side.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, this one...
Which is why they probably, introduced their Darktoberfest. So you got,
Yeah, you're gonna get smacked over the head with the malts here.
It's not that.
No, I know.
heavy,
I'm just
but
kidding. But that's what it sounds like when you're diving into that. I think Goose Island's Festbier is pretty tasty. I think I gave it a 4 on Untapped. I think it's good. It's definitely in the realm of my favorite style of Oktoberfest because everybody makes them a little bit different. But I prefer the breadier, malty character to it.
And I do too.
And I think that the noble hop character, while it's not very pronounced,
you do get a hop bitterness from it at the end.
And that's what I like too, is that it's only a little bit. Because then when you if you're throwing in a bunch of hops into an Oktoberfest, then you're just running the risk of it turning into like an ESB or something like that. You know what I mean? Like there's a fine line between
worse,
them.
yeah, an IPA with like an overly that's like didn't quite make it to red red IPA.
It could be like an amber IPA or something like that, you know, where
just imagine like, wait, the next thing we're gonna do is like a Marzen style IPA. It's like, oh god.
Yeah, it's like that would be like a Frankensteinian creation. Like I said, there's a fine line anyway between them, and I think that's why we like Oktoberfest, we like ESBs. They do have a similar quality to them that makes that would be. It would be hard to distinguish between them if you're throwing a lot of hops into an Oktoberfest or a Marzen style. So I'm glad that they went really light on the noble hops. I wouldn't want it to
I think it's just like that, like a crispness to it, like a nice.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it comes off very clean and tasty. I don't remember specifically the Goose Island Oktoberfest from last year. I know I did have it, but I don't remember.
I'm assuming that I had it. If you had, then I had it.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, I don't remember the exact character of it. I don't know if I could say, well, the Festbier is basically the same, or if there's a totally different.
It might literally just might be their Oktoberfest, but they rebranded it.
It may be, and I don't really know. It's possible. I guess we'd have to throw that out to the brewers at Goose Island and be like,
or go on their webpage and see like what they got listed for their beers for the season.
Yeah, like, hey, is this your Oktoberfest now, or is it just called Festbier? I would be interested to know, just out of curiosity's sake. But I like it. I would say if you're one of those people who is afraid of Goose Island because they're technically a macro craft beer, I would still, say, hey, try this Festbier, because I don't think they've done a bad job whatsoever.
If this was one of the first Goose Island beers I've ever had, this would inspire me to try more. Like, they did a really good Oktoberfest. I want to try. It'd be like the same thing with Magic Hat, though. Like, hey, the Hex is a good beer. Wonder what that number 9 tastes like, and then disappointment.
Right. I'm still on the lookout for Hex because I do want to have it on the show. Because that's one
you may very well have to go to like Magic Hat's brewery.
I know,
because they probably because all craft brewers now have like a pub restaurant now to tie in to with the brewery. So I guarantee Magic Hat probably has one too, where you can go take a tour and then have some Vermont cheese that's been flavored with apricot and a burger that has pears in it. Aren't we unique?
Aww. Well, I want to cover Hex because that's probably one of the only beers from Magic Hat that we would actually praise on the show. So
no, you praised the beers from last time.
That's true. I did give them a pretty good rating. So, but yeah, check out Goose Island's Festbier. It's out now. You can find it probably anywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah, anywhere. It's pretty widely available. So
it's like New Belgium now. You can't because they're owned. Mm-hmm.
Yep. They're all over the place. They're distributed. At least nationwide. It's good and bad. So, but give it a shot. I don't think you'll be disappointed.
I still see Sam Adams with their Oktoberfest, and though I haven't had it this year, I'm getting more annoyed when I look at it just because they spell Oktoberfest with a C.
Yeah,
I think last year we did a discussion on that, how you should spell Oktoberfest on your beer bottle.
I think we did. Yeah, I want to try their new Heffa.
Farmhouse Heffa?
Yeah, but I'm just afraid.
Well, it's a Dunkel. It's not a Heffa.
I know, but
that's why I
don't commit. I don't want to commit.
Because we talked about that, and I said I got annoyed with that because I like Dunkelweisens. I don't like Hefeweizens. Because they have two totally different taste profiles. Heifas are like banana-y and clove and just really awkward, like fruity taste. Doesn't taste well at all to me. Dunkels are more like in line with fall, like cinnamon, malty, bready. So I
think
imagine
we'll have to give it a go.
I imagine
just
the
to-
farmhouse, pumpkin-y, I would like quite a bit.
I'll have to try it.
But I'm just mad that they call it just call it like your farmhouse ale and have on the label. It's like our seasonal Dunkelweizen.
It's pretty much the only Sam's that I've not really had so far, like that's been put out.
I haven't gotten the
feel like-
variety pack at all yet because I've just been...
Well, I haven't either because I can't say that I'm like super excited for it. It's not that I think it's just that I'm burnt out on Sam's. It's just so widely available. We have it so much around here that I'm just a little burnt out, and I go for other brands rather than Sam's. Even though their Oktoberfest is good, it's very solid, but I try to go for other brands now. And one thing that pisses me off is that I went to Ruby Tuesday yesterday. Still got the summer ale on tap.
Told you.
What the fuck?
That'll be...
Pull that shit down.
By the time it's Christmas time, Winter Lager will finally be coming in because they can't get rid of that summer ale.
Even the waitress seemed fatigued because I asked her, I was like, what's your Sam Adams seasonal? She was like, oh, I think it's still the summer ale. I was like, yeah, that's how I'm feeling too, lady. I'll order a fucking blueberry old fashioned then. Give me that. So
You're mad about the summer ale still being there, and then you get yourself a fucking summer cocktail.
It's not a summer cocktail. It's a nice fall cocktail.
A blueberry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good. It was tasty. It's got mint in it. It had lime. It was really good.
Oh my
and
god.
a spritz of Sprite. So it's good. It's good stuff. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about it. Stay tuned.
Thank you for seeing me today, Doctor.
Of course. I see you're having some issues.
Yeah, it all started when I ran out of podcasts to listen to. I felt anxious, alone, and even scared.
It happens all too often. Podcast deficiency disorder. It can be a serious struggle with no answer in sight. Until now.
Introducing Nerdy Words from Geek Productions. Through intense peer review studies, the Nerdy Words team have developed the perfect formula to finally defeat all symptoms of PDD.
With just one episode a week, your feelings of helplessness through lack of podcast satisfaction will be a thing of the past. With heavy doses of off-the-cuff, barely put-together thoughts about all things nerdy and beyond, your PDD will melt away.
Side effects include frustration at hosts' inability to accurately quote facts, annoyance at their often bitchy attitudes, and inability to understand them through their drunken slurs every 5 episodes. Do not listen if you are nursing pregnant or may become pregnant.
Comics, movies, anime, video games, and much, much more with Nerdy Words. Fridays on acepodcastnetwork.com.
So how'd you enjoy Lost Boys?
I'm confused. What are we talking about?
This movie. It's Lost Boys.
Oh, you're gonna confuse the audience here listening. They're not gonna know what's happening.
Yeah, you don't get the similarities?
No, I get the similarities. I could have said the same thing about the Goonies, Stranger Things, as they share an actor, and pretty much any other like
Stephen King
later
80s.
80s Stand By Me. Yeah, any later 80s film that features young children in the plot.
You know what this movie's missing?
And when we say the movie, if you skipped ahead and you skipped all of our dialogue at the beginning and you skipped over our beer talk, we're talking about It, the 2017 remake.
But you know what this movie could have used?
What could it be?
Or it needed in it?
What's that?
The Coreys.
Yeah, it could have. I mean,
you don't sound... That is like, no, you should...
Well, one of them is dead, so they're not coming back.
It's called CGI.
Yeah.
They did that in Rogue One for poor... Oh, God.
Who are you talking about?
For Princess Leia.
Oh,
For
gotcha.
Carrie Fisher.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't like that. I'm not, you could say I'm not a fan of that. It's, I
mean, also, I was saying, they also did in Rogue One, too, for good old Peter Cushing.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's been, long
dead.
Long dead, so they see, the guy that was playing Tarkin in Rogue One, they CGI mocked him up to look as close as Peter Cushing as possible.
Yeah.
Not a fan of it either. But I'm just saying, it's Hollywood in 2017. Anything's possible.
It's true. All right, let's start out on it by talking about it. Yeah. All right, so we left off before we did our beer talk and everything. Before we did that, we left off with how you felt about it. So let's pick up from there.
I enjoyed it. I really did. I didn't, to be honest with you, I didn't really have a feeling either way towards this.
You didn't have a strong opinion going in?
No, not really.
It's going to be bad. It's going to be...
No, because I don't really, like I said, I don't really have like that strong of recollection of, the miniseries. All I really remembered was John Ritter and Tim Curry.
Right.
And John Ritter's not even really memorable in, the miniseries, so...
I think a lot of people coming into an It remake, I think they were... they had high expectations for it, but at the same time, they were tempered by the fact that they didn't really know how to feel about a remake, especially considering their nostalgia for the original miniseries. Like that, for us, in 1990, we were 1 year old.
Mm-hmm.
1 year old. So we didn't really, I have it from moving forward, after I got older, I checked it out because I was a fan of the book. I watched the book. I read the book.
I love watching books.
I read the book.
Called movies.
And I wanted to watch the miniseries, and it occasionally showed on different channels. But for a lot of people in the 1990s, that was a really big thing growing up with it, because that was it was the thing to do on the night that it aired. It was a 2-part miniseries. And miniseries...
It's like Who Shot JR on Dallas for the 90s.
Miniseries were a big thing. I think that we have now... Miniseries have become sort of they're like a remnant of the past. We don't have very many of them. They're not, and that part of that is because
seasons now are only 10 episodes.
That people are,
which is essentially now a miniseries. Like
right, yeah, and people are enticed to like tune in. Now there are so many channels. There's so much to watch and there's DVR, things like that. You're not really forced to be like watching the miniseries the night that it airs, and then the next day talking about it, like with your coworkers or at school or whatever, wherever you're going the next day. In the 90s, that was a very real thing, that everybody watched the same fucking show the night before, so you could all talk about it the next day, and there was no worry that like, well, that guy didn't watch it. Perhaps they VHS taped it. But other than that, there wasn't really that worry that people didn't watch it the night before. And now you just don't have that. There's a lot of people that, maybe I'll watch this, 3 weeks later.
When you think about it, thank God for DVR.
No, I
not like it's made like now you get to watch things on your own time and then be like, fucking new episode of Breaking Bad's coming out, this Wednesday.
I'm not going to be there.
But I really have this hot date with this chick I've been meaning to. Do I just blow her off? Like, nope. Gotta see what happens. It's,
yeah,
mid-season finale. Like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Just DVR it and then...
I'm not saying that DVR is a bad thing, but I do think that it did take away some of the experience of...
making certain things... No, I get it. Like, cultural, events. Yeah. No, I understand. Not only that, the proliferation of channels overall and content overall. Not only that, you have to compete with the internet.
Yep.
You got Amazon and Hulu too, and Netflix, and there's such a ridiculous amount of choice now given to you. It's no wonder why NBC is like, we're drowning in crap. We don't know what to do.
Yeah, I think that the original miniseries of it did the best that it could with the time frame that it had, and even 4 hours is not a lot of time to...
And that's including commercials.
Yeah, it's not a lot of time to get through all of the things that are really part of Stephen King's book. At 1,100 pages, there's obviously going to be things that you can't touch on. It's the fact of it. But at the same time, they did leave out quite a bit that they should have included. And I think that this remake is an attempt to rectify that and really get closer to Stephen King's original storyline, than even the miniseries could do.
And make it much more horrifying?
make it much scarier, horrifying, violent. Give it an R rating. R rating being a big one because as a TV miniseries, the childlike humor that does come out in Stephen King's story, you know, in terms of how kids interact and how young 13-year-old boys might talk and, you know, speak and joke around, that doesn't come out in the remake or in the original whatsoever. But in the remake, the R rating allows that. So some people would say, you know, some people argue the rating doesn't matter in a horror film. You know, PG-13 R, it doesn't matter because you can have an R rating that sucks anyway. Doesn't matter. It sucks. You can have a PG-13 film that does really well. And I mean, one of the ones that you can think about is The Sixth Sense. As a PG-13 film, still scary, still thrilling, and it's PG-13.
Yeah, it's not a horror film though.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it is.
I think it's more of a thriller.
But my point is, not to argue semantics, but is that in this case, for It 2017, there is a very real need for it to be able to be an R-rated film and to allow those elements of Stephen King's storyline about boys and you know, kids that are growing up and experiencing things. It needs that. It needs that.
You wouldn't get to see a child get its arm bitten off.
Yeah, well, that too. I mean, it allows it to be violent. I think that with It 2017, and we're not going to talk about the remake or the original so much as a remake, just because, you know, maybe we'll do an episode on that at some point. Don't want to steal all of the glory for the other film, but in terms of the remake, I think that it does a really good job of setting up the whole scenario of kids in this fictional town, building this town, even though the fictionality of it for Derry doesn't really come into play as much in here. It doesn't get much of a history, and it could be pretty much any small town in the USA. But at the same time...
But it's a Stephen King novel, so it's in Maine.
So it's in Maine, and it's in Derry, and it's a small town, and there's bad kids and there's bad people. But I think that it does a really good job of setting up the kids' dynamic throughout the film. Because the biggest thing is knowing that It, Chapter 1, is just the kids. Just them as kids. No adults, really. I mean, there are a few adults that appear here and there, but the focus is on kids. And
which differs from the miniseries, because that's
a combination.
That's adult, then like flashback, then like adult, flashback, you know.
And one thing that the original film does that does really go along with the book itself is that there are flashbacks within the book that are like, here's the kids, here's them as adults, then they're back as kids, then they're as adults. So that is kind of more present in the original miniseries, but I think it works really well for this new 2-part remake because that would make it a lot harder to divide the film at this point. And I think once you get to the end of it, and I'm not really going to talk about it in detail, but at the conclusion of Chapter 1, it's in a very good place to move into Chapter 2.
We should say spoilers alert by this point, too.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of spoilers are really going to be, I think, already well known. I mean, the book is like 30 years old at this point, and like I said before...
But still, it's a new movie, so...
Yeah, exactly, and I do want to say spoilers, and, you know, if you haven't seen the film, I would see it before you listen to the rest of this podcast, just because it's going to make things a lot easier for us to talk about as well, in terms of spoilers. And
you don't want to listen to an hour-long podcast that's, things happened in it.
Yeah.
What things happened? Well, this thing happened, that thing happened, and...
I like them. I didn't like that thing, but this thing I did like. Yeah, we don't want to talk in generics here. So
the film title does it, so why don't we?
That's true. It's true.
So it's good if it makes Stephen King like $5 million. Why don't we do it? I'm sure he made more than $5 million off that goddamn book.
Just keep in mind that we're probably going to talk about spoilers here in the next 40 minutes or so. So as I was saying, with it's the 2017 film. It's a lot closer to Stephen King's novel. I think some of the biggest things that it does well is setting up the kid characters in a meaningful way. Especially,
and they are very. And I like it for doing it. It's very much like a great throwback to like 80s.
Yeah,
films of like the mid to late 80s.
Well,
that's why I said like, hey, how'd you enjoy Lost Boys at the beginning?
Yeah,
because it is like Lost Boys. Stand By Me, like that, dynamic Goonies, as you said, like between the kids and their personalities. And
my wife said E.T. E.T. very much, in line with that as well. It does have that, the humorous aspect of these kids. You know what I mean?
And it is set in the 80s. They modernized it for today. Instead of being set, the kids part being set in the 50s, set in the late 80s.
I appreciate that.
Which is good. I think that is a smart change, because I think if you were to remake it and then have it set in the 50s, I think a lot of, especially now with like a younger audience,
it would have just been lost
to the chagrin. Which I think that's stupid. That like like this is stupid. What
Well, the 80s seems old now, so. That's
I know, but at this point, with like the people who are going to be bringing their kids to see it, it's going to be the people who can connect to the 80s.
I think that,
and that's a very thin connection for us, like because we were born 89,
right?
But even still, like we can look at it like, oh yeah, because we were still close enough years after to be like,
It was definitely a solid call though, because it's touching on the influence and the success of Stranger Things, for one thing. I mean, they share an actor. Finn Wolfhard, he is very solid in Stranger Things, and again in it, his character Richie steals the show almost all the time, and that's not unlike Stephen King's novel, where Richie was more of the humorous and kind of asshole kid.
Yeah, that'd be me.
Yeah,
with glasses. Yeah,
but I
calling everyone cunts, and it's great. 12-year-old kid like I drew the last straw, the shortest straw. Jeez, if it's a dick measuring contest, I wouldn't be in here with you guys.
Yeah.
Hey.
I mean, I think he steals the show because of the dialogue. But I will say, for the characters, there are some characters that are more important in the film than others, and while I understand that that's necessary, and we were talking about length a little bit at the beginning of the show,
because some of them get like
some of these kids, they don't really get much of a character or a personality to go off of, and I think that's one of the film's biggest flaws, is that it doesn't give all of the Losers Club enough time to become fully characterized and individualized.
I would say the biggest one would be Mike Hanlon.
Mike, is the black kid of the group, who you would expect to have a much larger role, simply because of the racism of the time, of in some of those ideas.
Well, and as you said in the book, that's part of a very big theme of it. Because I asked you at the end of the film, like, wow, I feel bad for the black kid, because out of he got the shit, like, compared to all the kids in that group, he got the shit beat out of him. Absolutely, like, the shit kicked out. Like, it was like literally like God like decided, like, you're the one that's gonna like get your ass kicked the most in here. And you're like, oh no, that makes sense, because in the book, racism's a pretty big theme.
Yeah.
Now one of the things, because when I was watching the clips from the previous and you might be able to relate this more to the novel. What I don't understand is, apparently in the novel and in the miniseries, he was like the one that was interested in Derry's backstory, and it's like history with like the things happening. Why in this movie do you think they chose to make it the new kids, Ben, make that like his thing, and then now the black kid, he's just an outsider because he lives he's homeschooled?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I have an answer for it, and I don't know that even watching the film
that they have an answer for it.
They have that there's really a reason where they were like,
it's literally because I almost feel like if they didn't like because of that single move alone. Like it would have been fine just for Ben to be the new kid in town who's smart. Like he does go, like show him going to the library because he likes to read and stuff. Like you didn't have to have him because he's the new kid being like interested in Derry's history. It would make more sense for maybe like Mike the outsider to be like kind of interested in it. Like why does my family say it's evil and be outside? But all they do is just attach him like his parents are dead. He lives with his grandfather on a sheep farm and he has to slaughter sheep. And he's very hesitant to do that. And that's literally all the character they give him in this film.
You bring up a good point because I don't really know that in this film, with Ben being the new kid, that they really give him much of a character to work with that makes sense for him. Because if you're thinking about a new kid coming to town, why would they immediately start researching the background of the town? It just doesn't really make sense for his character. But for someone like Mike, who is an outsider, who has experienced the evil of town, I mean, obviously he's probably experienced racism, which we see within the film.
Gets, harassed by... He's
constantly harassed. But also at the same time, he's lost both his mother and father in a factory, in a fire, in a warehouse building, that you would expect him to be kind of researching, like, well, that was kind of a strange occurrence, like, has it happened in the past?
And how his grandfather says, like, his grandfather doesn't outright say it. His grandfather just gives a line of, you gotta choose whether or not you want to, be the one to put the bolt between the sheep's head or be the sheep that get the bolt,
Yeah.
But he does say, like, my grandfather says bad things happen in Derry. That's why, we stay away. And that's all they say. But again, it's like literally all the character. So it's literally like he's like just there to get the shit beat out of him.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest issues with this film is that you have a couple of kids who are big parts of the film, like Ben, Richie, and Bill being like the main lead, the guy that we're really following the most, the kid that's the most important aspect for this story. But then you also have those secondary characters like Mike and Eddie and Stanley. And I would say that both Mike and Stanley are the least characterized characters in this film. And for the most part, if they didn't even have Stanley, you would be missing nothing. You would miss nothing based on, if that's the case, if they don't have time to really flesh out some of the Losers Club, I would be okay with them just chopping some people. And
it'd be like a Lupin film. Like, you don't have anything for Goemon to do. Don't have him show up.
Right.
Don't have him literally just be there, like, I cut something useless yet again, and like, go on his merry way. It's like just don't have him. You could do that with a couple of characters in this.
And my biggest complaint is actually that
I think that too would make the Losers Club that much tighter and much more of a bond. Instead of having like these 8 kids together, if you had it like down to 5 or 4, then that makes their bond and friendship, that much stronger. It's kind of hard to imagine, even at like 12 years old, having a group of like 8 friends that you're really close with. I didn't have like 8 fucking friends, like, they're super,
Yeah, I mean, I think...
I don't think most people do either.
With Stanley specifically, he's really like around to just say like, I don't think we should do this, guys. And that's pretty much it, And even in that point, you have Eddie, who is a more dynamic character even than Stanley.
But he's doing the same thing.
And except
with an inhaler.
Right, at least with him you have a little bit more reason to that. And so I'm saying that as though I'm complaining about it, but what I'm really saying is that I think it does a really good job with the characters that it does focus on, but the ones that it doesn't, I found that to be a little bit unfortunate because there's a lot of content with each of those. And I'm almost just wondering, with the focus on 2 films for this, if the idea was, well, we need to keep Stanley around because he's going to be important in part 2, or something like that. That there was an ulterior motive to saying like, well, let's not just cut that character. Let's keep him around because we're going to need him in the next film. So that's always a possibility. But what I'm saying is that I think they did a really good job, but then the ones that they didn't really characterize, they stand out even more. So I guess take that for what it's worth. But I do think that is both a compliment and a flaw to this film. Because they do good work with the other kids, and I think that
not only that, the child actors in this are great.
Yeah, the actors are great. I mean,
what a far cry from like the '90s, where like every child actor is like total.
yeah,
outside of like Macaulay Culkin is like a total
they were just like basically like reading a line and like please say this line for us, and that was it. It was something like that. No, in it. The child actors are really great, like
and they come off as like genuine, like that's what I think. Like, where you talk about the R rating comes in hand. It's like they sound like 8th graders, literally.
Yeah, potty mouth 8th graders.
Yeah, they just discovered the word "fuck," like a year or two ago, and so now they're sprinkling it in everywhere. And saying the kind of jokes that like 8th graders would find funny. Like everything's like about your mom and like how her vagina smells like cheese. Hey, hi, but no.
Yeah.
Shit like that. Though I will say the bullies in this, the bully characters are the most generic 80s bullies ever, with mullets, metal shirts like Anthrax and Metallica and Megadeth shirts. And not only that, they're supposed to be like 16 years old because they drive around a Firebird the entire time. They don't look like they're even old enough to drive.
Here's another area where the lack of characterization for some of those comes through.
Is the bullies.
Because
the lead bully is nothing but a psychopath, but you don't know why the fuck he's a psychopath. Except for one scene where his dad frightens him, but that's not enough to be like, well, that's why he would carve an H in this the fat new kids, And
that I wanted to bring that up too. I'm glad you said that about the one scene that we get with Henry's father, where we see why he's kind of the way he is. I think that
it's not enough, though. It's not enough to be like, oh, that's why he'd just like shoot a cat with his friend holding it.
Right. We were talking about characterization a little bit and what it has to leave out in order to not have a ridiculous running time, right? There's a lot of plot to get through that does not involve character, but just is about Pennywise the clown and
the substance itself.
The substance. So, in here, there's a lot left out about the true evils of Derry, and a lot of that has to do with the parents. Parents have really fucked up their kids in Derry
because they're neglectful bastards.
And in it, a big part of the concept is that every 27 years, this thing comes around, and it takes the kids. And you would think in a town like that, the people would notice that many fucking kids are being taken. At the same time, in the book, it makes sense because a lot of people are just really, they're evil. They're not good people. And a lot of the parents are that way. So when we talk about kids like Eddie, who has been ridiculously coddled by his mom to the point where he can't really do anything by himself, and he's been conned into thinking that he has all these diseases and illnesses.
Which that was a funny part.
It's a funny part.
When he's at the pharmacy and after they should have been playing like REM's "Everybody Hurts" because the friends like kind of broken up from each other, and but he's going to get his meds, and the fucking it just shows like what a great 80s like influence time film and time periods, because it's like a 14-year-old behind like the fucking counter. She's like, yeah, all those pills you get, they're placebos. I'm like, what? Means bullshit. Taking bullshit pills.
Yeah. I mean, that moment right there with Eddie is a lot of time spent in the novel, because it doesn't really seem like it in the movie, but his mom really fucks him up. His mom messes with his head.
Makes him think he's a bubble boy.
Makes him think that he's constantly ill. And that's a really big part of the evil that parents do in the book, in it, that doesn't really come out that much in the film. And I wish, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I wish that Pennywise the clown never really became such a big symbol for it, the film. Because while Pennywise as a clown is a large part of the book and Stephen King's story, there's also a lot more to it than just a clown doing these things. Because when we're talking about a clown, that's the thing it's taking as its form, that's not really it.
Because it's I don't know how much it's touched on the novel. Well, it's briefly touched on that Pennywise's existence is due to he feeds off of fear.
Exactly.
He feeds off of human fear. So
so
going off the tangent that you're going off of, couldn't you say that the parents are the evil because they're instilling that fear onto their children?
Exactly. That's the idea, and that especially for these kids, they are learning to fight back against that fear. And
which then, when they become adults, they'll ingrain that fear into a new generation, and that's why this damn clown keeps going on.
But within this film, I feel like the parents don't get enough.
Well, you barely see them. Eddie's mom is the main one you get to see. All you see of Bill's parents, you don't even see his mother at all. It's just the one scene, like when he's in the garage and the dad, finds out that he's been, trying to find his brother, the whereabouts of his brother Georgie, which they haven't even talked about at all, which is like the main spark point of this whole thing, that because Pennywise abducts and kills him, and Bill's been obsessed with trying to find him because he feels that he's at fault for it, which he is.
Wow. Ouch.
Yeah, he let his little 4-year-old brother go out and play in the fucking rain in the sewers.
Yeah,
true. I mean, granted, it's the 80s, different times. Yeah, go out.
Different times.
Yeah, but still. But when his dad finds out about it, he's dead! And then he's dead, and there's nothing we can do. Now you take this shit away because I don't want your mother to see it. And that's it. That's all you get to see of him.
Yeah.
That's all you get the mention of his mother. That's it. Then the only other adults you get to really meet, you get to meet Bev, which you haven't talked about either her yet. You get to meet her dad and how he's a fucking overbearing pedophile. It's not overtly stated that he's, inappropriately touching his daughter.
Yes, but it is obviously
very. It's veiled, but make you think it.
Yeah,
but
it doesn't come out, and I think
overtly
with Bev, and I gotta say, I think Sophia Lillis does a really, really great job as Bev. She's excellent. Almost like a young Sigourney Weaver, something like that, who's playing an older, she feels older than she is because of the way that she plays that character. It's really great, and she feels very worldly, and that makes sense because of the things that she's experienced based on her home life. Very changes you. That inevitably changes you. And that becomes, that's a huge part of the novel, of the actual molestation, the sexual abuse that occurs within that house. And in the film, they do touch upon it. I feel like they were a little bit afraid
to go
there. Little concerned with what that would, how much they could do with that.
I think in today you could get I think you could be
more explicit with it. Yeah. I don't.
You know what they could have done. I don't know if they did or not. You could have overtly did it and then just fucking send it to and get it rated. If it doesn't pass, all right, then just cut.
Right.
Keep cutting it down until you get to.
Yeah. I think they did.
Maybe they did for all we know. Maybe they did, and
sure.
And that's what because. The MPAA is a very fickle motherfucker on what they, thinks, you know.
I think they did a good job with it, though. The
subtext is there, and you get it.
You get enough of it to know. Okay, that's what's going on. The other thing, I think that is probably one of the film's biggest flaws, though, is that there's just not enough time to go into everybody's character. But it makes sense because if you're talking characterization that can take a long period of time to do it well, and if you're not going to do it well, then there's
no point. No point.
Just not do it. Because if you're going to half-ass it, then really there's no.
You're wasting time.
Yeah.
Like Batman v Superman.
Exactly. Let's talk about
the horse that will never be beaten dead on this podcast.
Let's talk about the actual presence of Pennywise the Clown, Bill Skarsgård, who is really a huge part of it in terms of how it manifests itself. He's the shape. He's the being that comes around in its form. What did you think about how they did the clown?
I think I enjoyed it very much. I thought it was great how he could come across as, kind of just like an ordinary clown and then shift to a more like just angry, demonic, and scary. Like, like the whole opening part when he's talking to Georgie, like it's creepy, like, but he's coming off as, like friendly as a creepy looking clown can, as he's talking to him about, But at the same time, you hear like the unhingedness in like his voice, how he's like, "Oh, you like balloon? Yeah, you like balloons?"
Yeah,
But I think he does a really good job, especially in that part, like kind of veiling what he is. I mean, granted, you're gonna
it's a clown in the sewer, so
yeah, so like
can't be good.
Obviously can't be good.
Yeah,
but that part works well. And then for the rest of the film, where he's obviously taunting and scaring the children, I think it's very well done. I think he has the right amount of creepiness and, like it factor to him.
I think he does a good job with his expressions, and his inflection. Really, I think is what does it, because he has that childlike demeanor, like the higher pitched voice that he puts on, but then at the same time you do hear that like wavering, that weirdness to it, that obviously he doesn't have good intentions here, but kids might not pick up on that, might just
because they're innocent.
They
take most of them, I mean, not maybe like not the preteens like of this that are starring in this film, but a child with the naivete more so not be able to really kind of. That's why, like, the whole line with Georgie, when Georgie's, like, after been talking to him for, like, 5 minutes, he's like, well, I shouldn't be talking to strangers. And he's like, well, Georgie, my name's Pennywise the Clown. Now we're not strangers anymore. And Georgie's like, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Kind of goes along with it there.
And then he's going along with it until, Pennywise starts saying, well, I'll float down here. Shifts. Makes that shift. And then that's when he realizes, I probably should leave.
I'm not a huge fan of the villains that like talk a lot, have a lot of, I guess, what you would call one-liners or, jokey conversation. But at the same time, I do think that
you don't like Freddy at all.
I don't like his later manifestations as much. No, you're right. I mean, I like the more serious, like dragging a body through the school style Freddy. That's more of a visual representation of what he does than a humorous, dialogue about it. But at the same time, I think that for Pennywise that works because he is sort of a it's meant to be sort of goofy. As a clown should. It's supposed to be a demented version of that goofy clown that would interact with kids. And I think it works in that way. And like I said, I think Bill Skarsgård does deliver a pretty good representation of how you would expect Pennywise the Clown to act. He does a good job with that.
It's nowhere near as over top as Tim Curry.
No, for sure not. It's not over the top, and it's not like Jared Leto as the Joker sort of thing either. It's definitely more nuanced than that, and I appreciate that because I didn't want anything like really over the top or explicit for that character. As I said before, I wish that perhaps they would have gone a little bit lighter on Pennywise the Clown as it is the main focus of it. But at the same, again, I have to say that the film does a good job of attempting to show some of the characters' fears, because we get a painting lady,
which is a leper.
We get a painting lady who is like, her face is kind of messed up. The eyes are all messed up. And we also get a leper, which I think, for judging from my mind, I think that's probably the only time we ever really see a leper on screen. Otherwise, they're just called zombie. You know what I mean? But the leper, we get the leper that as another sort of fear. And I think that's really an intriguing part of the film, which I wish maybe came out just a little bit more in terms of like how seeing
him manifest like
as other fears besides a clown, because
That's Richie's fear.
That's Richie's fear. We don't even really know. Do we
And
know?
we don't. And you don't know about that until 2/3 of the film. Like after we've Pennywise, has already appeared to everyone as in clown form, and because they're going through saying talking about that they did see, scary. Because that's right after they got done washing Bev's bathroom that was covered in blood, but it really wasn't covered in blood. Only Bev saw it. They were lying to her about it. That they actually saw it. But then when they started talking about, no, I did see something too. Bill says he saw Georgie, and then, they keep going, and then Richie's like, I saw a clown. And that's,
Yeah,
that's where he's like, I fucking hate clowns.
I do wish they had given us just a little bit more with that, but I like that they did go into that at least a little bit, in terms of, even when we're in its lair. And we do see from, Stan's point of view, we see, there's the painting lady. And then, we see a little bit more, from Bev's point of view, it's her father that comes out. I like that. I just wish that it came out a little bit more rather than focusing so much on Pennywise, because while he is an interesting character and he does have that sort of mystique about him, people are afraid of clowns. This is pretty common fear.
He's not explained enough to really...
Yeah,
and I don't know if in the second film they'll bother to kind of, draw out what he actually is, because literally in this he's just some demon thing.
Right, he's just a thing.
Who knows? Be afraid. That's all you know.
Yeah, I mean I think it's good, but there is some of that missing element to it that I wish they had more of, with the actual kids' fears besides a clown. At the same time, they do use quite a bit of effect on Pennywise
to make him a lot come off as more frightening than in the miniseries.
A lot of CGI,
speeding up and
some speedy movements and things like that. How did you feel about that?
I liked it. I actually.
Oh, you did like it?
No, I did. I thought I didn't find it scary, but I thought, I'm that's, it's really well done. I could see if someone was watching this at a younger age would find that probably creepy as shit. A clown, speeding at Mach 5 at you.
Mach 5, that's a good
with the scourge, just, stinging. So, I didn't find this film scary at all.
No.
Your mom did.
Yeah, my mom did. That's true.
The two, and I'll give this film credit. There's not a lot of jump scares in it, but one, out of the two jump scares in it, one of them got your mom really good.
That's true.
Had the whole theater looking at her.
Yeah.
As she was giggling, I can't believe I got scared. Oh my god.
Yeah, I would say that I don't find this film scary in the least. I was not scared, one time, or even... I don't even feel like I was on the verge of it, in terms of
I would say tense moments, but
tense moments. At the same time, I don't think a film has to be scary as a horror film in order to be successful.
Well, no, because most horror films aren't. If we watch Halloween all the time, we're not gonna find that.
And I'll be honest with you, as a longtime viewer of horror films, I don't really find anything scary. I don't get scared in films. The only time would be if there's just an occasional jump scare that might,
catch you off guard.
Might catch me off guard one time. But for the most part, I don't really get scared. I will say that I was a little bit disappointed in the building of tension. I think that there are films that do it a lot better than what Andy Muschietti has done in this film. And Andy Muschietti, he previously directed Mama. And so I didn't have high hopes for it because of the CGI factor, which Mama did have quite a bit of CGI and, some of that monster movie magic that I'm not really a huge fan of. And I will say that it does have a lot of that same stylistic choice. When we're talking about the leper's kind of...
Totally... CGI,
CGI designer nightmare kind of.
Reminds me something like a Conjuring movie.
Yeah, I would say even more something out of Insidious or something like that. Which really they kind of have that stylistic decision to have those messed up faces done by CGI, and I don't find them particularly scary or effective. I actually think they detract because they look so out of place.
When I was talking about the CGI, I meant more the whole Pennywise
works well.
Yeah,
Pennywise
works
is
well. you're right with the leopard, like the whole like painting and leopard, like that would be a lot cooler if it was like an actual natural effect. Like you see,
Right.
and especially now, like God bless you, like how good makeup is nowadays. You could easily mock something up and make it look,
I think they could have made the leopard look a lot more naturally realistic, because when you do see his full features, especially the face, it's very clearly CGI. Like it took me right out of it because of how I would say it did look to me. It looked fake. It did not look like a real situation. I would have rather seen a physical effect on that face, a makeup effect of like dripping flesh, things like that. That would have been a lot more effective. And the same thing with like the painting lady, because I do think that looks very unrealistic, as you're in a setting that's supposed to be very spooky. It's a sewer. You have these kids in a perilous situation, and then you have this like weird CGI lady that just pops out of nowhere. I didn't find that particularly effective. So those areas, I really wish they had gone a more physical route. Pennywise transformations, though, can be very effective, especially when the mouth morphs to
something demonic,
encompass like all of those teeth that pop out. Those are really good moments. I think that the editing for that's really well done. Some of the more chaotic movements I wasn't a big fan of, just because I feel like that's a little overdone in terms of like, oh, they move at a weird, ridiculous speed, something like that. I feel like it's been done too many times now. I'm talking like any sort of Japanese film, things like The Ring or The Grudge, stuff like that. They move at like a weird pace, and it kind of, so it's supposed to throw the viewer off, but I don't know if it particularly works that well.
I thought
it can be effective.
I think it's better done than like The Grudge, and
I think that your mileage may vary with that, because for me, it didn't really do much for me. For you, it was effective, and I think that's just basically the viewer who has to decide. Do they find that effective? There were a few scenes that I think worked better than others, especially like Pennywise coming out of the water by like the dead Georgie, as like a puppet. Georgie almost as a puppet thing. That's a very cool visual. I think it worked really well. And similarly, which is straight from the book, is Pennywise coming out of the projector. Another really well done moment that is effective and especially surprising if you've not read the book, because I knew it was coming. I remember that scene vividly from the book. But if you didn't read the book, that would be kind of a surprise for you. So really interesting. I just wish that they hadn't spent so much time trying to put Pennywise in different situations. How about the humor of the film? Because the humor is going to be a very like a hit or miss point for people, because some people are going to come into it and expect it to be like constantly serious, constantly scary. Others are going to come in and maybe enjoy the humor of the film. So I want to hear your take on it. What did you think?
I liked it. It's just because like for me it's a nostalgia thing. It's like I said, it's a throwback to like 80s and 90s like kids films, and not only that, also like adult variant too, with like just all like again them talking and sounding like they're an actual group of kids that are going to high school.
Yeah,
all the cursing and dick jokes and slowbrow humor, yes, but that's what you should get.
But it's like it's fun because you kind of remember that time period, from like a perspective, an older perspective.
Yeah, like as you said, like earlier, like every other word's like fuck. It's what it was.
Yeah,
it's like wow,
And as we said, the child actors, they do a really great job with it. They are able to deliver those lines. And I think the humor here, it works really well, because not every film has to be drudgingly like serious.
And not like that too. Like a lot of the humor too is like definitely directed to like again our generation. Well, kids gonna watch this movie and be like, oh no, the new kid likes New Kids on the Block.
Yeah, very contemporary
like
reference for sure. Very funny reference, especially in the way that it keeps recurring. I did like that.
I thought it was really funny when they're like in his bedroom and he was like went to like throw some shit in his closet that he was embarrassed by to like hide, and then like as they're like walking around his room and like talking about like, oh, look at all the shit you got about Derry, and then Bev like closes the door a little bit and to show like look at him like, hey, you got that New Kids on the Block poster still hanging up, and he's like, oh my god.
Yeah, it's great.
And then she like, like closes it like, I won't tell.
Yeah. It's a way to like those characters too. To like the characterization of those characters. I think the
who doesn't like Hanging Tough?
It's true. It's catchy. I think the humor here is it's necessary because like we were talking about the nostalgia factor of the films from the 80s. The Goonies wasn't always like serious, like let's just do plot stuff. It was fun too.
No, most of it was.
You had fun. A lot of fun. Even the Lost Boys, as you were talking about before, has a fun, teenage storyline to it that, yes, happens to have vampires in it as well. That kind of gets violent later on, but in the beginning,
it's all fun and games.
It's fun. And we're talking about vampires too, like Fright Night. Has a lot of fun moments in the beginning too, as a kid who spies on his neighbor and thinks his neighbor's a vampire and seems ridiculous at first. Fun times, there is the nostalgia.
That's what you did as a kid.
That's right. I was always spying. So I think the humor really does work. So some people might find that it is probably more humorous than it is scary, and that's okay. I think it's
a horror comedy.
I think that's okay. I mean, I think that you are allowed to. Rather than just find it overwhelmingly spooky and scary and creepy.
It'd be drudging if it was 2.5 hours of just like, ooh, bad things happen to children.
I think you would, you're okay to find this funny. And you're okay to, not be entirely scared or in suspense by it, but just having fun.
You gotta have some levity before some psycho tries to carve his name and carves an H into some fat kid's, stomach.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Can't really be like all like dark and dreary and serious, and then you get to that part, and they'd be like, all right, well, I'm watching a snuff film here.
I'm checked out. Yeah. I can't put up with
Which
this
props
anymore.
to that kid for taking, that carving like a champ.
Sure.
Was barely grimacing when he's, had that H cut into him.
Yeah.
And what did they... Hey, this is part of the... Like, at least... It's probably unintentional humor. What makes that next part kind of funny? How do the kids that find him deal with it? They don't take him to the hospital. We'll just get some Band-Aids.
Some gauze and wrap him up.
Which that was like one of my big questions. Like, his parents are going to ask about one day, like, hey, what's this mark and bandages you got on your stomach?
The big H scar that you got on your stomach?
Like, no one's going to, like, I mean, I know it's the 80s, but you think dad's going to be like, suck it up, son. All right, this is how you're going to learn how to box.
Maybe.
You're going to show that kid what's what.
That seems like all the parents.
Do we need Frank from fucking It's Always Sunny right now going, those were the days? Those were the days. You just get to carve kids up and no repercussions. Just,
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's fine to find this film funny and coming away with it having more fun than you were scared. That's not an unacceptable, and I would say not an unwanted conclusion to draw from it, because and one thing that I am concerned about is how this translates in chapter 2, because when you get adults in there,
it's probably gonna be more
it's
serious.
Probably going to get more serious, and I'm just wondering, can they continue the appeal that It Chapter 1 has? And that's my biggest question, and one that I'll be looking for when, after It Chapter 2 releases, is does it follow up well from the first film? So that'd be interesting. That'd be something for our podcast episode that time.
Well, as I say, your mileage may vary because you've read the book. So, which part did you find more interesting? Children's or the adults?
To be honest with you, I think I found the children's more interesting. There is a lot more to the adults as well that involves the evil of other people. You know, and I would like them to branch out into that for chapter 2 to really show that it's not just it or Pennywise that is evil, but there's bad stuff happening, and that's why these people are subjective to it, and they're strong enough to overcome it and overcome their fear. So, how did you feel about the conclusion? As we talked about, as I said previously, I think it ends in a good spot to continue forward for the second part of it, which is the adults.
Well, as you said, apparently in the book they have a gangbang, so I'm disappointed that didn't make it to the theater. Would be very avant-garde of them to.
Yes, a 13 and 14-year-old gangbang would be pretty avant-garde.
I don't get the point of that being in the fucking book either. That's just like, to me, comes off as like, I'm writing this shit for the sake of writing it.
And in some ways, he may have been, to fulfill a quota and fulfill a deadline, but
I'm sure at 1,100 pages, his quota was fucking met.
It's been a while since I've read it, so I don't know if I have a... It was more so that they were preparing to die.
Well, I know, because I was watching, like, today, like, what's the difference from, like, Cinefix on YouTube, and they're describing it. That's one of the parts they talk about, like, how that wasn't in the miniseries, and for obvious reasons why it wasn't. But they said from the book, the whole point of the book is because they're, you know, getting ready to die, but and also that, like, Bev thought, like, now that they conquered their fear, to show their bond as friends and the love that they have is to do that, to ascend into, like, adulthood. And I think that's a very flimsy fucking, like, like, the script, like, you know,
excuse to have it in there.
To justify it. Look, if I'm 12 years old, I'm afraid to die, like, you know, I'm about to die and or overwhelmed by what just happened in this fucking dingy sewer. I don't care that I'm afraid that I'm about to die. Last thing that's going to be on my mind is, hey, let's get in line and have sex with the one girl in, you know, the group. I think at that point I might just be content with, like, oh, I didn't get to know a touch of a woman. I'm going to die of a heart attack now. This sucks, but oh well. I don't know, you know.
Well, as you see in the film, the bigger issue here is not an orgy or a gangbang, but the, like, love triangle between Bev and Bill.
Well, that makes more. See, that makes more sense though, and that's like, and see that like See, I was gonna say, and that like ties more to like a common like thematic thing with, especially like love triangles. Like the poor fat kid's gonna lose. Like, well, he's the smart, sophisticated one. She likes him, but not enough.
He's got the poetry though.
No, I know, because again, like when she realizes it was him that wrote that because she thinks it was Bill that wrote that poem. Bill's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's got a stutter. And so, but, you know, like, she's like, oh, okay. But that doesn't detract her from, like, her attraction to him. And then when Bill, like, not Bill, when Ben plants that kiss on her when she's comatose, like, she's shaking her and trying to wake her up from, you know, Pennywise having her in a coma. And he kisses her to, like, wake her up, and it actually works, because, you know, it was the love that, you know, conquered Pennywise and, not, you know, overcoming the fear. And she says the line, like, she's like, wow, and, like, kind of like, you know, well, thank you for that, but at the same time, like, hey, thanks for saving my life. Hi, Bill. Hi. Yeah, you go over there. I mean, I'm not judging. I'm just saying, like, it's like a typical, like, kind of, it's a love triangle, but at the same time, it's not really a love triangle, because it's two people like the same person, and then that person only likes one.
I think
it's, you know, it's not. There's no real competition going on there from what we get from the movie. Maybe in the novel there is. I don't, like, you may know. Like, I don't know, like, how that's all sorted out. But
I don't remember that specifically.
But from the what we gather from the movie, it's her. You know, it's a one-way street.
Yeah, I think probably what attracts her most to Bill is that he is the one that's not fearful. He is the one that's constantly pushing to fight against it and to come together, work together as a team to best him and get over their fear. So maybe that's why. Maybe he's just I guess we could use the term alpha in that situation.
Well, if she knows that he's going to grow that ponytail later on, she better
yes.
She better get out and run.
Well, she did.
And go for John Ritter instead. Because,
that's right. She did, though. She cut and run.
Because John Ritter's going to make that problem child money soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like, I'm fine with that part, but like like I said, at the same time, like, it's just, I think they could have done a better job kind of, making it, feel more like it's like there's stakes involved. Because at the end of the day, when you get done watching the film, it's kind of like, oh, poor Ben. That's just typical teenage. Like, I like and I'm fucked. I lost. Then you get to cry for like 3 months eating Baskin Robbins ice cream before you move on to your next crush.
Is that coming from experience?
Maybe.
You have actual experience in that?
Yeah, well.
No.
Don't we all?
It's true.
Don't we all? Can't all get lucky like you.
In terms of conclusion and climax, though, I think it does a pretty good job.
No, I like it too, and so like kind of like go off like the problem like I have like the book part with like the whole sex thing. I think the whole like the blood oath at the end, that's perfect. That's fine. That like totally and I think that's a perfect way to end the film.
Well, that also occurs.
No, I know it does, but I'm just saying like so the past part is nullified. You didn't like in the novel. You don't need that.
You don't need a cum oath.
No, you don't. You don't
just
need
a blood oath.
Yeah.
One bodily fluid will do it. Gotcha.
But I mean like what that part symbolizes and all like that symbolizes whatever he could have possibly have been going for, in the prior.
Yeah.
And does everything without being, like, overly, like, graphic, heading into, like, Nabaka, territory.
I think when you talk about contemporary films, my dad loves to go on about this. About how films and TV shows now are so convoluted between past and present. Jumping in time.
Oh, he would hate watching a Tarantino film.
Right,
then.
but my dad hates that. So he says, it's become so complicated he can't follow it. So he's one of those people.
And he's a well-read man.
Sure. But so he has
shots fired.
He has a very very opinionated feeling about those films that they jump back and forth in time. And so when we're talking about traditional like the book and the miniseries, those do jump back and forth in time. There's past and present. You see, and it occurs like within the what's happening. You get a past and present.
At least with film, let's say at least with a novel, when things usually jump back and forth, it's between chapters. It's not
you get a little. Yeah.
So that break, you're literally having a break in between so you can, adjust to, like, if it's adjusting to time or if it's adjusting to, like, character perspective, movies are different, like, has to be kind of edited and well-paced enough to where you can kind of, go along with it.
But I think, like, with this remake, it does a good job of doing what it needed to do for the kids and holding off on the adults part of it and just setting up the next part to run right into it, because you do get that blood oath. You do understand that, like, Bev's leaving, so there's going to be a break in this group. Not everybody's going to be together, and that doesn't happen when you grow up. People leave, they go away, they leave town, they move out of your life. And so I think it ends in a really good place, because that this core group of people, they're already going to be broken as Bev leaves town. Mm-hmm. And so you have that feeling like, oh, well, now we need a chapter 2 because something else is going to happen. In 27 years, it's coming back. So you can't really kill it. So it really sets up that next part really well. Even maybe better than having it constantly flash back and forth between past and present.
No, I think a chronological order for this works much better than kind of jumping all around. Yeah. It's able to, set a consistent tone throughout.
Yeah, I agree. I think it works really well for this.
And plus, it would be pretty miserable if at least with a mini series, because you can get away with jumping around, because it's like, tune in next week for, the conclusion. Here,
I mean,
waiting
we're
a
not
year-
talking about next week. Yeah,
I know it's a year or two until the next film comes out.
Right.
So like, if you had it jump all around, it would be a lot harder for the second film to come in. Kind of like with Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, because they jumped all around. You know, because it was meant to be one fucking entire film, but, you know, the studio's like, we're not releasing a 4-hour film, Quentin. You know, it's ridiculous. But even still, how that's Tarantino style of, you know, constantly jumping around the narrative. It's, you know, going to be like, if you're like, oh, I haven't watched it in a while, so, you know, what the hell did they leave off on?
I definitely think that the intention was that It 1 and Chapter 2 could stand on their own. So you could just see It Chapter 1, and you didn't need to see Chapter 2. But you'd probably be interested in seeing Chapter 2. If you saw Chapter 2 first, it'd be okay, because then you could go back and see Chapter 1 and see and it would be interesting to, like, watch them in different orders and see, you know, how that affects the experience. But I think they did a really good job of setting it up. Props to the writers who were really able to kind of disperse the storyline so that they could just break it up into, you know, here's the kids and here's the adults. Works really well. And I'm very surprised based on the production dilemmas that it has had and the constant flow of like directors and stuff like that it was actually able to become such a coherent film that was really enjoyable as a whole. That's really, you know, it's surprising because you don't always have that with a film that has gone through so many production issues. And, you know, sometimes it feels like, oh, okay, so this was written by like 4 different people. You know, that makes sense because it seems all over the place. You don't really have that with it at all. So I think it did a really good job. And those looking, you know, people have been waiting for a really good adaptation of it. And I think this is it, you know, for one half of the novel. This is a great adaptation of what Stephen King originally had.
And that's one of the fears. Like I said, I didn't really have an expectation or feeling going into this, but the one that I did have is Stephen King films. Not very good track record.
Yeah, not really. Only a few have actually.
Besides, like The Shining,
Carrie.
You know, it's
Stand by Me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would say that's probably about it.
No, Rose Red is good.
My wife is saying Rose Red, although that has paled in comparison once you go back and rewatch it. It really does.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like like Cujo and like Christine. They're not like bad, but it's not like
right.
You're not like
Firestarter.
Pet Cemetery.
Pet Cemetery is
that's good for all.
Your
That's
series not lasting right now. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
well, no, because I can name a whole bunch that aren't. Like The Langoliers, if you were to go back and watch that miniseries, not very good. The Stand, I would say as a miniseries is not very good and probably really does require an actual remake because there's a lot of content within The Stand that they could actually walk away with and do more with.
The Bangler.
The Mangler. Yeah. Under the Dome as a TV series, probably not so good. So yeah, it doesn't have a great track record. I mean, you know, for everyone that has done really well, there's probably 2 or 3 that have really not done very well. And a lot of that has to do with like taking it on as low budget, things like that. But Maximum Overdrive is a really good example of one that's really not very good, but still pretty fun, and a lot of people enjoy it just because of it. But you know, from a technical standpoint, it's not very good. Emilio Estevez is in that one. By the way.
My favorite Sheen.
Yes. So, but yeah, it's not a very good track record, so that makes sense that you're a little bit apprehensive. You know, will this actually work? Even, you know, The Dark Tower is a great example too. Just recently released, you know, not 3 or 4 weeks ago, and
I didn't
bombed.
see like any trailers or anything for it.
I mean, it was big for a while. People were really excited about it. They were upset that the gunslinger was black, Idris Elba. They were upset about that. You know, it wasn't akin to Stephen King's original novel. So that was a whole big thing. But yes, once it hit theaters, it really did not do very well. And that's probably because it was not a good representation of the Dark Tower series. It was more of a story within the Dark Tower series, and people didn't like that. So it's another good example of a film that doesn't really do that well. That's a Stephen King original. But, all right, so let's give it a rating. Out of 10 red balloons.
Wow,
That just
read
makes
my-
sense, right?
read my mind.
It just makes sense.
I thought for the opening, it just actually came.
Oh, yeah.
It just came to my mind.
99
Luft balloons, yeah.
balloons, yeah.
But I'll settle for Roy Orbison. No, it's not settling. I love Roy Orbison, so.
And in Atomic
You
Blonde already did that twice, so 99.
Oh, yeah, they did.
So they already beat us to it in 2017.
Yeah, it had the upbeat part and then the 9 sleeping.
Yes.
Yeah.
They already beat us to that. So out of 10 red balloons, what do you give it?
I'll give it 8 red balloons.
That's exactly what I was going to give it. 8 red balloons.
This is a very good movie. I like it a lot. This is one of the rare times I think this is a film that could have been longer. I would have, after watching this, I'm like, going into it, as you know, when I found out it was like 2.5 hours long, I was kind of pissed. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I knew it was gonna be like this long, but just thinking, like, oh, god damn it.
And it's only 2 hours and 15 minutes. So.
But still.
Yeah.
After watching it, I feel like it could have used, actually, to be 3 hours. I want to know, why is Derry such a shitty place? I want to know why the parents are so shitty. I want to know why this bully that we briefly touch upon, though he's constantly in the film, I want to know why he's a psycho. I want to know more about our loser group's backstory. I want to get into the nitty gritty of it. I think it's the story itself and the characters are so well portrayed for the most part that I could easily enjoy watching it be more intricate and more developed and strung out to being a 3-hour film. In fact, after watching this, I think this would totally benefit more from being a miniseries.
Or a TV series.
I think
10 episode,
10,
limited.
6 episode,
No under the dome crap where it's this is going to be one season, but if it does well, we'll just make up shit. You know what I mean? None of that. A very, you say, okay, this is going to be it.
It's literally a miniseries. This is it.
This is it. We're doing one season. It's going to be the whole series, the whole story, and that's it.
And I think that would work incredibly well for this, because like I said, after all the things the subtext when I was watching that I picked up on, you're right. Just in the book, they just don't go into it. About the racism and stuff like that. It's you were saying, and you didn't talk about the podcast, but after watching the movie, you're saying how also, how anti-Semitism is a theme in the book, too. And it's literally, one of the characters in this, the least developed of them all, is Jewish, and that's all his character is, and, he doesn't do anything else. He definitely could have used,
more,
development on, how, okay, so why is him being a, Jewish person important? Besides he's having a bar mitzvah that's not even a part of the story. They briefly mention his bar mitzvah's coming up. I hear they chop your weenie off. Joke,
Right, yeah, it just becomes sort of a joke of what his character is. So, yeah. I mean, I agree. That's pretty much the exact same reasons why I would give it an 8 out of 10 is that I found it very enjoyable. Not super scary, but more so, just overall fun.
Not only that, it's well paced.
Well paced.
And not only is it well paced, also, and especially for 2.5 hour film, this film's relentless.
Yes.
It is. There is no real stopping in this movie. There's only very few points where you're kind of getting your breath caught. It's, for the most part, this film's constantly just driving, where something's happening. Something's building to, the next, tense moment. It's building to the next, character development. Building to... It's very persistent in its pacing.
Yeah.
And I think it works, and again, it works very well. You gotta have, a certain tone and pace set for a film of this length for people to be captivated and want to sit and enjoy the film. And I think this film does it well. I think, as we talked about earlier, the acting in this is fantastic. I think all the child actors in this do a fantastic job, encapsulate that feeling of being a child within the late 80s to mid 90s, very well. And just how kids, even today, how kids kind of talk, except, they'd be more fucking more modern jargon lingo thrown in. But it, the bond they have, it feels real and works very well. I think Pennywise is very good. I think he's got some really interesting and well thought out, like, scary moments. I think the score is pretty good too. It's, especially in the more tense moments and how it like this, like the violin stings and kind of build and build. It's a very enjoyable film. I like it a lot.
Yeah,
and I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, I liked it a lot as well, and besides all the flaws that I listed, like just not enough time to go into some characters, lacking some of the evils of the parents within Derry. A lot of really good things are happening in this. Character being one of them, with like Richie and Ben and Bill and Bev. Those are really the big ones and their actors do a phenomenal job. Bill Skarsgård is pretty creepy as Pennywise. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the actual fears of the other characters that we don't get so much. Besides Pennywise attacking and things like that, and some of the CGI, I would say that they should probably cut down a little bit on that for the next film. Try to avoid the CGI moments and facial CGI effects and go for a more physical touch to it, because I think that's more effective, and I think they would get more mileage out of that. Be a little bit scarier. It wouldn't take those people out of the intensity as much as some of the CGI effects do with the leper and the painting woman.
I will say this is one of those rare examples that a remake trumps the original.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if you consider it a remake to the miniseries, absolutely, certainly a much better film in every way to that original. And like I said, I don't know how much I consider a remake. I know there's like a big there's not a consensus out there, but there's a lot of debate for whether this is a remake or just an adaptation, and it doesn't really have much to do with the original miniseries. It doesn't really matter. We're calling it a remake for Remakeoween, and I think comparing it to the original, way better on almost every level. And I think everybody who loves Stephen King's novel will really, really enjoy this as well, and find a lot of things very close to the novel. So go see it. It's out now. Even the film that we saw, and we live in a small community.
And we've said several times before watching newer films in here how usually the theater's empty. Yeah. We're like the only two in here.
It was relatively busy for those types of theaters, with I think probably like 15 people, I would say, something like that. So
we went to a later show, like 8 o'clock.
Yeah, so that's quite a bit. I would say that's definitely over the norm for people going to movie showings. So go see it. It's a lot of fun. I think you'll really enjoy it.
So what do we do next time?
Next time, I knew you were going to ask me. Well, we have a few options.
We don't have a few options. We have a fucking... We have
a plethora of options.
We have a schedule. We have a schedule set, and now you're saying we have options like it's a multiple choice test.
Well, we never really came up with a schedule per se.
Now people know the production behind it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we don't have a schedule. You had said something last week after the show that you wanted to do as a remake, and I can't remember what it was.
On the show or after the show?
No, it was not during the show. It was after the show. I can't remember what it was now.
There's a whole bunch.
Yeah, there was a whole bunch. So we definitely aren't doing Halloween, because we're saving for later.
We're not doing Friday the 13th.
We're not doing the Friday the 13th because there's a Friday the 13th in October, and we'll do it at that time. So options include Nightmare on Elm Street, the remake. There's potential for things like Prom Night, the remake.
Hills Have Eyes.
The Hills Have Eyes remake. Could do Dawn of the Dead, the remake.
Evil
Dead.
The
Evil Dead remake. We could do Night of the Living Dead remake.
Oh, that's the one.
That's the one I think you said.
That's the one.
Because we were looking for something that wasn't, a 2000s remake, which is that's the majority of
when the boom of the remakes.
There's also like Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is a remake technically. So there's that.
Is it a remake?
I think for next week we're doing Night of the Living Dead, the Tom Savini remake. Because I think that'll be fun. It ties in with the Night of the Living Dead that we did previously on the podcast, so that's fresh in our mind. We could talk about the original and compare it to the remake. So I think that's next week. Night of the Living Dead, 1990, whatever it is, version.
I think it is 90.
Yeah, I think it's 1990 version. But I think that's the next one. That's the that'll be fun. And then we'll go from there because we don't, like I said, we don't have a set schedule. But we definitely have a lot of films to get through, and there will be a double in October because you're going to get one during the week, and you're going to get one on Halloween as well. Special Halloween episode. So
they already know what it is.
Yeah, that's true. They do. But
and if you don't, then shame on you.
That's right. But we're going to have a lot of fun for Remakeoween, so make sure that you keep tuning in. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, any other podcasting app that you use. We're on there.
I can tell you one episode after we're done with this, what we'll be doing in November.
What's that?
We're doing Death Wish.
Oh yeah, the new Death Wish remake.
So we saw the poster at our local theater because they had it up, and
it's coming out.
I got irritated. I can only imagine what they're gonna do with that.
I have no idea.
They're gonna just make it like ultra violent.
Probably. So catch us on iTunes, Stitcher, everything like that. You can leave a review, nice rating for us. Appreciate that. We're on Twitter, Blood and Black Rum. Tweet us. Give us suggestions for new episodes, or you can email them to us at bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/bloodandblackrumpodcast. And we also are on Patreon, patreon.com/bloodandblackrumpodcast. You can donate to us. Remember, that's a monthly donation, so it will come out every month. So just keep that in mind when you're putting in your values. Don't want you to go broke. Other than that, stay tuned for the next episodes of Remakeoween. As I said before, we're doing Night of the Living Dead 1990 for next week, and we've got a whole slew of remakes to come. So stay tuned with us through that Halloween season. Thanks a lot for listening.
Take care.